Today's subject is a woman whose beauty defined an era, whose grace rewrote what it meant to be royal, and whose face became the bridge between American cinema and European monarchy, Grace Kelly. She left behind Oscars, scripts, and studios, all for a crown, and for a kingdom that watched her live like a legend and die without warning. This is the story of Grace Kelly and what happened to the children who survived her legend. Princess Caroline, the silent heir. She was born in January 1957, 10 months after Grace Kelly's wedding turned Monaco into the world's most glamorous stage. Caroline wasn't just a princess. She was the firstborn of a woman who had once ruled Hollywood and a man who ruled a country the size of Central Park. The press crowned her La Petite Rose de Monaco. But behind the palace balconies, Caroline's life was anything but a fairy tale. Raised with discipline in 4 languages, trained in ballet, art history, and diplomacy by the age of 10, she was a child rehearsing for a life she couldn't rewrite. Grace Kelly, now Princess Grace, ruled her daughter's world with cold grace and hidden sorrow. There were no tantrums allowed, no slouching, and no public mistakes. By 1974, Caroline had graduated from Lycée François Couperin and began studying at the Sorbonne, immersed in philosophy and political science. She read Marx and Sartre in the morning and hosted dignitaries by evening. She was 17, but books couldn't shelter her from a public hungry for drama. In 1978, at age 21, she married French banker Philippe Junot, 17 years her senior. The tabloids called it romantic rebellion. Her parents looked away in polite disappointment. That marriage lasted only 2 years. In 1980, they divorced. Caroline's first scandal. But what came next shattered every version of childhood she had ever known. On September 13, 1982, her mother's car went off a cliff on the Corniche. Grace Kelly was gone. Caroline, just 25, stood in black lace beside her siblings. Albert, still a bachelor, and Stéphanie, still reeling from being in the car with Grace during the crash. With her mother gone, Caroline stepped into the role of Monaco's first lady, the silent matriarch. No coronation, no speeches. She simply showed up, at funerals, banquets, embassies. She took her mother's place without asking for it. In 1983, she met Stefano Casiraghi, a charming Italian powerboat racer. They married in 1983 and had 3 children within 6 years. Andrea, 1984, Charlotte, 1986, and Pierre, 1987. For once, Caroline looked genuinely content. But peace was brief. In October 1990, Stefano died in a boat racing accident at 30 years old. Caroline was 33, a widow again, with 3 children under 7. Monaco wept. Caroline didn't. She packed her grief into a black suit and walked forward. In the 1990s, she left Monaco and raised her children mostly in France, trying to shield them from the machinery of monarchy. In 1999, she remarried, this time to Prince Ernst August of Hanover, heir to the old German royal family. The union gave her one more child, Princess Alexandra, born July 1999. But that marriage came with scandals, bar fights, rumors, estrangement. By 2009, they had quietly separated. Today, Caroline remains the eldest child of Grace Kelly, and perhaps the one who bore the heaviest burden. She never inherited a throne, but carried a legacy. Her silence spoke volumes. Through tragedy, exile, and constant scrutiny, she never unraveled. At 67, she stood beside her brother Albert as he finally took the throne their father once held. Grace Kelly may be frozen in film reels, but her strength lived on. Not in the spotlight, but in the woman who walked through it, quietly holding the line. Prince Albert II, the reluctant guardian. He was born on March 14, 1958, less than 14 months after his sister Caroline, and from the moment he entered the world had plans for him. Prince Albert Alexandre Louis Pierre of Monaco. Future sovereign, only son of Prince Rainier III and Grace Kelly. His christening was televised, his childhood photographed. But behind the camera flashes and royal duties, Albert grew up in the shadow of 2 legacies, one carved from the steel of European monarchy, the other forged in the fire of Hollywood fame. Grace Kelly didn't raise a celebrity. She raised a successor, quiet, cautious, prepared. While Caroline burned with curiosity and Stephanie with chaos, Albert learned how to disappear in plain sight. Boarding schools in Switzerland, Amherst College in Massachusetts, internships at the United Nations, fluent in 5 languages, good at sports, never too loud. That was the job. The world would one day call him His Serene Highness. But in the 1980s, he was just a prince with 2 passports, one future, and 1,000 expectations. When Grace died in 1982, Albert was 24. Her death didn't just break the family. It froze the image of their past. Caroline stepped into Grace's shoes. Stephanie became a tabloid target. Albert became vacant. He showed up at functions, shook hands, but rarely spoke more than required. His dating life became the press's favorite guessing game. Models, actresses, rumors of marriage. But none stuck. Behind palace walls, Albert was dealing with something else. A kingdom waiting and a legacy fractured. His father, Prince Rainier, ruled until his health declined in the early 2000s. In April 2005, Albert officially became Prince of Monaco. At age 47, the bachelor prince was now the ruler. And that's when the second story began. Almost immediately, 2 truths came knocking. In 2005, Albert publicly acknowledged his first illegitimate child, Alexandre, born in 2003 to a Togolese flight attendant named Nicole Coste. In 2006, he confirmed a second child, Yasmin Grace Grimaldi, born in 1992 to an American waitress, Tamara Rotolo. Neither would be eligible for the throne. Monaco's laws were clear. But Albert broke with tradition by recognizing both. He met them, provided for them, gave them his name. In 2011, the bachelor prince finally married to Charlene Wittstock, a South African Olympic swimmer. The wedding was elegant but tense. Photos of Charlene crying sparked rumors of regret and palace pressure. Still, the couple stayed together. And in December 2014, they welcomed twins, Jacques and Gabriella. For the first time, the line of succession felt secure. Jacques, the son, would be heir. Gabriella, the fierce and precocious daughter, second in line. But Albert's legacy has always been more complicated than just a crown. He modernized Monaco's economy, pushed for green initiatives, and worked tirelessly to polish the principality's image beyond casinos and scandal. Yet the ghosts of the past, his mother's crash, his father's sternness, the decades of scrutiny, never quite left him. Even now at official events, Albert's face holds the same expression he wore at 24, measured, unreadable, as if he knows the fairy tale has long ended, but someone still has to guard the palace. His children, both legitimate and not, carry parts of him, but it's Albert who carries all of them, quietly, under a crown that never weighed more than the silence he inherited from Grace. Princess Stéphanie, the runaway flame. She was born on February 1st, 1965, the youngest child, the so-called wild one, and the last living connection between Monaco's royal family and the golden age of Hollywood. Princess Stéphanie Marie Elizabeth entered a world already scripted for her. Perfect hair, perfect posture, perfect silence. But from the beginning, she refused to play the role. Where Caroline was poised and Albert was obedient, Stéphanie burned with restless energy. As a child, she would sneak out of palace corridors, mess up her hair, mock the formalities. Grace Kelly once said Stéphanie reminded her of herself before the studios. Untamed, impulsive, aching for freedom. But even Grace couldn't prepare her daughter for what came next. On September 13th, 1982, Stéphanie was in the car with her mother when it veered off a mountain road above Monaco. Grace suffered a stroke and died the next day. Stéphanie, just 17, survived with injuries, but also with a lifetime of questions. She refused to speak publicly about the crash for decades. Rumors swirled. Was she driving? Could she have saved her mother? The silence only fed the speculation. In reality, she was a teenager who watched her mother die, powerless and bleeding beside her. After the crash, she withdrew, not just from public life, but from the palace itself. In the mid-1980s, Stéphanie launched a brief modeling career, becoming the face of Dior and gracing the covers of international magazines. Then she tried pop music. In 1986, her single Aragon became a surprise hit across Europe. Critics mocked it. Fans adored it. Stéphanie didn't care. She wasn't trying to be a princess. She was trying to be anything else. But rebellion came with a cost. Tabloids followed her everywhere, through romances with bodyguards, circus performers, and married men. In 1992, she had her first child, Louis, with her then bodyguard, Daniel Ducrouet. In 1994 came Pauline. By 1995, they married. Briefly, he cheated. The scandal was caught on tape. Divorce followed, but not collapse. Stéphanie pressed forward. In 1998, she had a third child, Camille, whose paternity remained private for years. The palace never confirmed it. Stéphanie never explained it. That was her way. Wounded, defiant, loyal to no script but her own. In the early 2000s, she joined a traveling circus. Not as a guest, as a member. She toured Europe with elephants and acrobats, working behind the scenes. People called it bizarre. She called it peace. Later, she turned toward advocacy, supporting AIDS awareness, animal protection, and serving as a goodwill ambassador. Slowly, the headlines faded, the chaos quieted, but the wounds never left. Stéphanie has said little about her mother's death, but her life says everything. She ran from it, raged at it, then found her own rhythm beyond its shadow. Today, her children are grown. Louis and Pauline have forged their own careers. Camille, the most private, stays mostly out of public view. Stéphanie remains in Monaco, rarely seeking attention, still the most unpredictable thread in the Grimaldi legacy. While Caroline carried the crown and Albert carried the burden, Stéphanie carried the grief. Loud, messy, unapologetic. She was never meant to be royal in the traditional sense. She was Grace Kelly's daughter in the way no one else dared to be. Rebellious, radiant, and relentlessly real. And through every misstep and every scandal, she never once denied who she was. In a family built on appearance, Stéphanie was the rupture, and somehow the most human proof that the fairy tale had a cost. 3 children. None of them chose the spotlight. None of them lived a fairy tale. One stepped into her mother's silence and carried a crown she was never meant to wear. One inherited a throne and spent decades trying to hold together the pieces of a fractured legacy. And one, the youngest, refused the script entirely, and in doing so became the most honest echo of Grace herself. They didn't follow their mother's path. They lived in its shadow and survived it, each in their own way. If you found this breakdown powerful and want more deep dives into the hidden lives of Hollywood's forgotten children, subscribe to Legacy Uncovered. Your support brings these invisible stories to light. Thanks for listening.